In Napoleon Hill's timeless classic, Think and Grow Rich, he defines a mastermind group as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. In this podcast, that coordination is created between you, me, and our amazing guests. Our definite purpose is achieving extraordinary results in your business and your life. I'm your host, Brad Mulvey. Welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. What up, y'all? Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode number 100? What? That can't be right. How in the heck did that happen? Seems like just yesterday that we were kicking this little shindig off and doing this little experiment called the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. And here we are, triple-digit episodes. That is bonkers to me. Thank you so much to anybody who has been listening from the beginning. And thank you to everybody who's picked up along the way. Couldn't be more excited about the community that we're building and the people that I've had the opportunity to meet because of this show, including a lot of you guys who are listening. If you haven't checked out the Facebook page, check us out. Just search Millennial Mastermind on Facebook and you'll find that. We've got a pretty rad community that we're starting to build and having some great conversations there. Would love to have you be a part of that. So for episode number 100, I've been racking my brain trying to think, what should I do? How can I make this episode special? And it was pretty obvious to me after giving a little bit of thought that to pay homage to all of the great guests that we have had, I'll create a little mashup of some of our greatest hits, if you will. And of course, I cannot include all of the great advice that we received along the way from our guests and our mentors who have been here for the journey, but took a few clips and tried to create a cohesive story of how do you become successful from beginning to working through it, through getting through those hard times to the end. What are the important pieces? And so that's what we're going to go through here today. And I broke it out into a few different sections. First, we're going to start talking about clarity and checking in with some of our guests who have given us some amazing advice on how to find clarity on what to do and how to get started with that idea or that concept that you want to pursue. Then we're going to move on to setting goals. Had some great tips on that. Taking action, getting mentors, because that is a huge step along the way. Working hard as those challenges come up. Staying focused throughout this journey of creating the life that you've been dreaming of. And then finally, talking about having the right mindset to get through those hard times, to get through those times of adversity that are undoubtedly headed our direction if we really are going to build something special here. So that is kind of the format, the outline, and I'll check in with you guys throughout the episode, but I'm really going to let the amazing guests that we've had shine on this one. And if you want to hear more from any of these folks, just go back to their original episodes because this is just a snip of what they had to offer. So with that, hope you guys enjoy this episode. Again, thank you so much for joining me in this crazy journey that we call the Millennial Mastermind, and I cannot wait to see what happens in the next 100 episodes. So with that, we're going to kick it off with Geoff Hoffman, the co-founder of Priceline.com, who joined us way back on episode number 25 to start chatting about how do you find clarity and how do you figure out what it is that you want to do in this life. Another one from Jake was around the concept of clarity. He said that he's always hearing that you have to find clarity and go after that thing once you find that clarity. He was wondering, how do you find that clarity? And then once you have that, how do you know it? So I guess in your instance, how did you know that you found the project or the problem that you wanted to work on?
All right, so a couple of things. First of all, don't force it. You know it when it happens, right?
Okay.
People that are forcing it and pushing for that, we'll probably walk right past it.
Sure.
You have to do two things that almost sound conflicting. You have to let the world come to you, but you have to do that by being in it. Get off the couch, go out, go places, meet people, try things, go to things that you don't even know why you're going to. I've been to conferences that I was like, I'm just going to wander over there and see what this is. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I've met people that just strangers. I said, hey, tell me about you. And they're like, oh, okay. So the more engaged you are in the world around you and just exploring, the more of an explorer you are of life and culture and people and places, the more likely you are to stumble upon something. And when you see it, you'll know it.
Right.
What happens is you wake up and you say, oh my gosh, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. You just won't see it coming, right? Mm-hmm. But when it's there, you'll know it, and your odds are higher the more engaged you are in the world around you. So I love people that just try things and go places and meet people and get, color outside the lines. Get out of your lane and out of your comfort zone. So the more engaged I am in the world around me, the more I stumble into interesting people and interesting opportunities. That wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have been in that line at the airport that day if I just decided to stay home on the couch.
Sure.
I think that's it. So don't push it, but get out and increase your odds of finding that clarity. And once you see, you will know. But here's the last thing I want to say about that. It was Jacob, right? This question?
Jake? This was Jake.
Yeah, Jake. The other thing I want to say about that is the good news is it constantly changes. You'll be totally focused on something you have absolute clarity on, and then you'll finish that one. Mm-hmm. And then you just go back in the world again and find another one.
Right.
The good news is you don't have one mission for your whole life. You have certain goals, but you get to keep doing this over and over. In different phases of my life, different things were important to me. There was a point at which I just knew we had to go make music. And music was, what I was thinking about, focusing on, not tech. And we went out and we actually produced a jazz album. That's the album that won the Grammy last year for Best Jazz Album. But while we were in that moment, we were totally focused on making music. That was my passion. That's where our heart was. I tuned everything else out. That's kind of an important thing, by the way, because you pointed out, I've done multiple things in multiple areas, but I want to be perfectly clear, never at the same time. Every one of those, I've been a serial entrepreneur, not a parallel entrepreneur.
Okay.
When we had clarity on something and when we were locked in, we tuned everything else out and just execute one thing at a time in your life so that you can actually get it done.
Some killer advice from Geoff Hoffman. Next, we'll hear from Angela Duckworth, author of the New York Times bestseller, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. Angela had joined us for episode number 32.
I was very unhappy when I was a millennial, or I guess I was never a millennial. When I was in my young 20s and even through my mid-20s, I was so unhappy. I cried a lot. I wondered whether I would ever find a guy that I would want to marry. I wondered whether I would ever have kids. I wondered whether I would ever make anything of my ambition. I felt lonely a lot. I didn't feel satisfied about my friendships. There's so much angst and suffering. And I guess I would say, it's going to get better. Mm-hmm. Have patience, and in fact, that is actually what I think young adults need to hear. All of the graphs of what happens to you after your 20s. How does your emotional stability look? What about your grit? What about your dependability? How do your relationships look? They all go up, so you have everything to look forward to.
Some very encouraging words from Angela. Next up, we're joined by Geoff Woods, who shared how we can get hyper-focused on the area of our life that needs the most attention and the one thing that we can do to start making massive improvements today. Geoff started the Mentee podcast several years back and then networked his way into a position to take over as the vice president of the One Thing Company, which he now runs with Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. He joined us as the guest of honor for episodes number 1 and episode 42.
On page 114 of The One Thing, we have what we call the 7 circles. This is what Gary and Jay would argue are the 7 most important areas of your life. And I will list them off to you. Number 1, your spiritual life. Because at some point you're going to wonder why the heck you're here. Number 2, your physical health. Because if you don't have your body, where are you going to live? Number 3, your personal well-being, meaning the things you do that make you happy. Number 4, your key relationships, because we're relationship creatures. Number 5, your job. 6, your business. Or 7, your finances. Out of those 7 areas that I listed, what's the one that just struck with you where you're going, yeah, I really need I've got pain in that area and I need improvement. The truth is, you have a one thing for every single one of those areas. It's about making a meaningful change in one first. Proving to yourself that you can make a change in one first. Just pick one and then ask the focusing question of the book. What's the one thing I can do for my personal life, my spiritual life, my job, my business, my finances? Such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary. And for Brad, he goes, monetize the podcast. Okay, well, what's the one thing I can do to monetize the podcast? Talk to my listeners. What's the one thing I can do to talk to my listeners? Put a call to action on every single podcast and every single email blast that goes out every week. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's Brad's one thing. There you go. The end. It's about applying the focusing question until you get down to something that is so small, so specific, so measurable that you can do it. And just start doing it consistently.
So now that we've got a grasp on how to get clarity on where to start, let's move on to the next step of the process, goal setting. There's no one better to guide us on this topic than the godfather of content marketing himself, Mr. Joe Pulizzi. Joe was our guest back on episode number 31 and is the founder of the Content Marketing Institute, a company that originally started as a blog, but then sold in 2016 for over $17 million. Do you have any advice on how to make sure that the goals we're writing down are actually measurable and it's something that we can take a look at and make sure we're on track with?
Absolutely. I'll give you a couple things to talk about that. The first thing is you want to write everything in the present. Like I have one and I'm going to have one goal in here that I'll read you, and it says, I have written and published 5 best-selling books. So I haven't yet, by the way. But I have, that's one of my goals. And one of my goals is to have 5 of those best-selling books. And really, right now, I have 2. So I need 3 more.
Well on your way, though.
Well, but I have to, so I read that on a regular basis and figure that out. So if I go to, where's the one that's a really good example? So I've got something on here. I have my goal book in front of me, by the way. So if I open this up, so I have, I run at least 5 miles per week and do 2 half marathons per year. So it's very measurable, right? I can measure 5 miles running per week and I can measure 2 half marathons. By the way, my second half marathon of the year is this weekend. I was really close to almost not making that goal. So I had, things like, and so these are really important things to me. I wear 32-inch pants. That's a goal of mine. So I stay in shape so I don't go to 34-inch pants. Those types of things. These are really sort of me. I'm not sharing with you my deep, dark goals here, but those are little things that I can say, look, they are absolutely measurable. So when you put in and you say, okay, let's say you have a financial goal and you say my net worth is X millions of dollars. What is that X? Like put it down there, put it out there. And then when you hit that goal, then you can change it. But up until that point, that's what you're shooting for. And so everything, and that's where it sort of was a big thing to me. And as I was figuring out my goals to start with, they were very much like, oh, I want to be a millionaire. So that's what? It's like, let's be really specific. Like my net worth is X. And I'm going to write a book someday. No, I have 2 books that I've written or whatever, those types of things. And same in the present tense, and just put a number to everything. And that has just changed my life. And so that's how I do everything. And so if it doesn't have a measure on it, it's not a real goal. If it's not written down, it's not a real goal.
And then do you incorporate dates with those as well, of dates you want those specific goals to be achieved by?
In some cases, I do. Like, obviously, I had, because I have new goals now because I change them all the time. I probably, every quarter, I'll change one of these goals as I go forward. But the one was, I will start, or I have started a business by April of 2007. So that one was very specific. Now, once I got to April 2007 and I started the business, now I had a new goal. I could cross out that goal. Check. Did that one. Now I've got something else. So, but absolutely. Like I've got one in here under mental goals. I read 1 non-business book per month. So that's sort of a per month or a per year or those types of things.
Right.
So that's absolutely, they're time-based when they need to be time-based, so I can actually keep to the goal. So, I could say, so if I said, however you need to do the time, 12 books in a year, I don't care. I like to do per month because seems a little bit more manageable. I could do, instead of saying, 12 books in a year, that seems like a lot. Or maybe it doesn't to a lot of people who read fast. I don't read fast. But if I said 1 book a month, I could do 1 book a month. Anyone could do 1 book a month. So those are I like to break them down in the smallest time I possibly can because it seems more manageable to me.
So now we have clarity on what to do. We've set some goals. Let's go back to Geoff Woods to talk about how we start taking action.
When you look on the cover of the book of the one thing, it says the surprisingly simple truth behind extraordinary results. The challenge is that people think big in terms of their goals, and then they start trying to act big. Oh, I'm going to go create this mastermind. I'm going to do this big marketing campaign. There's going to be Facebook ads and pixels and funnels and all this stuff. But it's about thinking big and acting small. What is that one simple action that you can do, not think you should do, your wife tells you should do it? You can actually do it. You have the capacity to do it, such that by doing it over time makes everything else easier or unnecessary. If your one thing every single week was to talk to 5 listeners, then there you go. Now the question is, can you legitimately talk to 5 listeners? Maybe it's 1 a week. Maybe it's 2 a week. Whatever it is, if you engage with your listeners, they're going to tell you what their pain is. They are going to validate the product, and you will be able to pre-sell the product before you spend a minute of your time creating that mastermind that eliminates your risk.
All right, so now we have a game plan to start taking action on those measurable goals that Joe had walked us through. But what's one way that we can help shortcut our progress? And one thing that has come up over and over again with different guests is the power of mentors and finding somebody who's already achieved what you're looking to achieve. So when we went out to find somebody who could tell us how can we attract really, really successful high-level mentors, we chatted with Keith Ferrazzi, the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Never Eat Alone. Nobody better that we could talk to because he is the master of networking. So let's hear from Keith Ferrazzi on how to attract those high-level mentors.
I literally was just this morning on the stage with Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager, who now wrote a book called The 1 Minute Mentor. And young people who approach me with enthusiasm, passion, gratitude, and generosity get my attention. So if an individual within my own organization wants to bend over backwards, or outside of the organization wants to bend over backwards and apply what I write and what I talk about, and then come to me and tell me how they're living my mission in life. And then they ask the question, I've been living your mission based on your advice. Here's the results I've gotten in my life as a result of it. How can I be of service? That person gets my attention. And that's the formula. The formula is, you, as a young person, you lead with generosity, even if that generosity is the passion of your gratitude. You follow with generosity that you have probably in more abundance than the people that you want to meet, which is time. What can you do that this person would appreciate in the time that you have? It could be volunteering to do some research, volunteering to look at their website and come back with comments on how their website could be more effective for millennials. It could be, offering any number of things. And some of it's just pausing and asking the question, what can I do to be of service? And say, here's how many hours I have. What can I do to help? I so much admire what you've done. I'd love a little bit of advice. The challenge with, say to somebody, I love and admire what you've done. May I have a little bit of advice? That works inside of a company very well. when everybody knows that as a leader, their job is to be a mentor. When you're reaching out to somebody who's got a business of their own or a CEO of a company, etc., just reaching out and saying, I want your advice may not hit to the top of their priority chain. Mm-hmm. So you've got to come up with other ways based on your research to be more of service to that person. And then once you find the sweet spot, they'll give you the time. Once you get the time, you follow with authenticity. You follow with, effusive praise of what they're doing. You follow, and then ultimately, as they give you advice, you go put it to action. People who give advice want to see their advice is put to action. I mean, not many of us who give advice are that interested in giving advice again and again and again when the people that are hearing it don't put it into their own life. I mean, why would I continue to give advice and continue to focus on somebody who consistently doesn't build networks, doesn't build relationships, isn't of service to the people around them, isn't leading the movement that I'm leading in their own lives and in the world around them? I mean, that's just not worth my time. I'm on a movement. I'm on a mission. And the people that you probably want to get to know are on a mission and on a movement. If you're not going to feed their mission and movement, then you kind of don't deserve to ask to be in their universe.
Sweet. Thank you, Keith. So now we've got clarity. We've got our goals set. We've got mentors to bring us along and show us how to do things the right way from the get-go. But at the end of the day, it truly comes down to putting the work in, building that sweat equity. So let's go back to Angela Duckworth to hear what she has to say about putting in the hard work.
So reading through the book, one of the things that really caught my attention early on in it, and it was a theme throughout the book, was the importance of effort in whatever it is that you're working on. And like you said, over those decades. And the idea of the treadmill test I found just so fascinating, so interesting. Would you mind explaining a little bit what the treadmill test is and what some of your findings were around that?
There are two historical references to the treadmill test. One is that Harvard University had what they called the Harvard Fatigue Laboratory. And early in the 20th century, Harvard decided to put young men who were undergraduates at Harvard on a treadmill and asked them to stay on it as long as they could. Now they cranked up the treadmill to a sufficient incline and ramped up the speed such that, some men could only hang on for a minute and a half.
Oh my gosh.
And I think they ended the trial at something like 5. It was really, really tough. And the interesting finding from that study is that when you then follow those men into adulthood and you ask the question, well, how are they doing at middle age? Are they in a stable romantic relationship? Are they working? How many days sick have they taken in the last year? Are they mentally healthy? That the number of seconds that you could hang on to that treadmill predicted all of those outcomes, even when you control for how healthy physically those young men were when they got on. So it wasn't just a physical test or an athletic test. It seemed to be something of a psychological test.
Okay.
And actually the scientists behind that who wrote up the report, even in the early years before they knew what would happen to these men, all those decades later, said from go, you know what, this is not just a test of your athletic ability, this is a test of your will. So that's the first historical reference, and it's interesting that we sometimes use treadmill as a metaphor, but there was a Harvard study. And the second historical reference is much more recent, and that is Will Smith, who a couple of decades ago said in an interview that the only thing that sets him apart from other people who are trying to become successful is that he will never get off the treadmill before you will.
Yeah.
And so that is the reference that I actually prefer, because I know what he means, and he's obviously using it metaphorically. It's not to say that other things don't matter. It's not to say that luck doesn't matter, or opportunity, or talent, right? How gifted you are at something, but there is no substitute for sticking with something with all of your heart and doing it consistently over long stretches of time.
Well, hell, if Big Willie is in, so am I. Everything that Will Smith touches, in my eyes, is gold. Especially Wild Wild West. I mean, what just a treat for all of us. So next up, on the topic of hard work, sticking with your goals and staying focused, let's circle back to talk with Neil Pasricha. Neil started a blog called 1000 Awesome Things, which has over 60 million hits and won Best Blog in the World 2 years in a row. Neil joined us back on episode 89 to chat about the importance of staying focused on the task at hand and the whole concept around multitasking.
There is no such thing as multitasking. So I researched multitasking. It turns out that the word multitasking was invented by IBM, like the computer company, in the 1960s. They said multitasking is when two processors appear to be simultaneously working, but really the switch rate between the two is just really fast. So actually, I realized that's what real multitasking is too. You don't actually, take your socks off while brushing your teeth. You take little breaks from brushing your teeth to take off your socks, and you take little breaks from taking off your socks to brush your teeth, and you end up spilling foam all over the sink and bouncing around all over the floor because it doesn't work. And so a really big problem with the world today is that we all think we can multitask when actually our brains can't. We have one processor in our brains, one brain. And so our technology is essentially disabling our happiness because it's causing us to switch all the time. McKinsey actually did a study that shows that 31% of our time at work is spent bookmarking, prioritizing, and switching between tasks. We are like Donkey Kong in Mario Kart. We can go really fast, but we take a long time to speed up. So the takeaway in that chapter of the happiness equation is, live in airplane mode, disable all texts, all alerts, notifications, doing everything you can to avoid the trappings of modern technology and the false god called multitasking, which doesn't actually exist.
So the final chapter of this episode is about mindset, especially your mindset when you face challenges and really hit adversity, how you overcome those things and how you react, to just those shitty situations that you could not have foreseen, which will inevitably happen in all of our journeys, whether it's our personal lives, our business lives, or elsewhere. Stuff's going to happen, and we've got to have the mindset to be able to overcome it. So first up, we're going to talk to my main man, Aaron Walker, who is the author of View from the Top, just a phenomenal mind in the entrepreneurial space. And Aaron will discuss how he had to overcome some of the biggest challenges in his life and how he went about doing that. One area I didn't even know about before you and I hopped on today was that terrible accident that you were involved in, and it sounds like that really shook up your world. Would you mind just kind of walking us through kind of what that period of your life was like? I mean, you were on cloud nine, everything was going well, and then you have this totally unforeseen incident come up that turns everything upside down. What was your mindset like at that point, and how do you get past something like that?
Yeah, I don't know that you ever get past it. You learn to deal with it. God's grace is sufficient to cover all things, and He gave me the grace that I needed to work through that. But things were good. I mean, I was a decent guy. Things were going good. Had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids. I mean, life was good. We had the house and the stuff. I won't go through all that, but we had the tangible things, and I thought, well, this is good. And what I discovered through that accident is that all of it was about me. That was the problem, Brad. The problem was I was looking inside rather than outward. And what I discovered through that process is we need to look outward more than inward if we're going to be extremely successful. And that's what this taught me over that next 5 years is, hey, man, there's more to life than just you. There's other people out there, and you need to be thinking about other people. And Adam Grant wrote a great book called Givers and Takers. And see, I was a taker up until that point. Now I'm a huge giver. And as a result of being that giver, I'm more significant and more successful. And it's just the natural reciprocity of things. When you give and give and give, as Gary Vaynerchuk says, you get. And it's true. And you don't give to get, but you just naturally get back. And what it taught me in that accident is that you can focus all your energy and make money. You can be successful, but at the end of the day, nobody cares, right? Except you and your family. And I want to make a difference in other people's lives. And so Enrique was 77 years old. He was from the Philippines. We found out later he just couldn't see well. The bus driver had warned him over and over, said, you're going to get hit, man, if you're not careful. It's a 4-lane highway right in the middle of Nashville. And he ran across the street, paused in the middle of the median for a second. I sped back up to go on because he looked like he was going to wait. Soon as I got to him, he took off running to catch that bus. He thought he was going to miss it and ran right out in front of me. I pulled over and stopped. And Brad, quite honestly, I didn't want to turn around. I was praying, God, are you serious? Things are so good. My family's awesome. Business is great. We got all this stuff. And boom, man, my life just come to a screeching halt. Finally, I got the courage up and I turned around and looked. Cars were stopping, going both ways. People were jumping out. And there lay Enrique face down. And I said, maybe he's okay. Please, God, let him be okay. And I ran over and he was motionless. Paramedics came and he was still alive. They loaded him up, took him to Vanderbilt Hospital where he lived in the trauma unit 3 days. And they finally called me and told me. And man, it just so rocked my world. And I think back now, all the people that may even be listening to my voice, the tragedies that have happened in their life, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a financial situation that's happened that's devastated you. Maybe it's relationships that have gone bad for you. My encouragement is work through that. You can make a choice. You can lay down and you can curl up in a fetal position, or you can pick yourself up and move on. And man, there's a lot of life to live. And I want to encourage you guys today to put a stake in the ground and decide, I'm not going to let this get me. That's my message today. I'm not going to let this, whatever it is in my life, keep me down. I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to move on.
This final segment on overcoming adversity and positive mindset comes from our good friend Hal Elrod. This was a clip out of episode 99. Hal Elrod is the author of The Miracle Morning, which is just an amazing book on morning routines. But with that, let's just hear about the extraordinary struggles that Hal has gone through, but even more importantly, how he tackled those mentally without breaking too much of a sweat. Pretty impressive stuff here from Hal.
My dad's response was, Hal, that was for much milder adversity than never walking again, though. I said, but the principle's the same, Dad. I said, I can't change that I was in a car accident, but I get to choose whether or not that makes me sad, angry, depressed, or whether I focus on all that I have to be grateful for in my life. And I said, look, if the doctors are right and I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I promise I'll be I promise you I'll be the happiest person you've ever seen in a wheelchair, because I'm in a wheelchair either way. So what's the sense in being down and depressed and all the things the doctor said are normal, angry, depressed, sad, scared? I don't see any value in that. That's not going to give me the quality of life I want. I'm in a wheelchair either way, just like we're all in the circumstances that we were, let's say, born into or that happened in our life, There's certain things, in fact, many things that we cannot change. We can't change the past, but we suffer over the past. Think about when you get upset, right, Brad? If you get angry, it's usually over something that just happened, right? Whether it just, it happened, now you're upset. Mm-hmm. Well, it's now in the past. So no one ever teaches us this, but we get to choose our emotional state if we choose it. Most don't choose it. Most let their circumstances or the events or the people in their lives affect how they feel and their quality of life. And I realized that we actually have the power to choose the emotions that we want to feel in any given set of circumstances. And the only way to do that is, first and foremost, to accept those circumstances unconditionally without wishing they were different. So most people I've heard, when they're in a car accident or they're told they're never going to walk in, they put all their energy into going, this is unfair, I don't deserve this, I'm a good person, and they wish so badly that it didn't happen because that wasn't the plan for them, that wasn't what they wanted for their life. And to the degree that we wish or want for something to be different is the degree that we create emotional pain for ourselves. And we create it. That's the thing, is we think negative emotions, we blame them on things outside of ourselves, but it's always self-created by our level of resistance to our reality. So anybody listening, and I'll wrap up with this, I'll just say, think about the things in your life that cause you emotional pain. In other words, what's your wheelchair, right? What's the circumstance, either from the past, the present, or maybe it's something in the future that, is on the way that's not ideal for you. But what's the circumstance or the adversity that you allow, probably unconsciously, you don't consciously do it, but you allow to cause, or you create emotional pain over that because it's not what you wanted. And I would invite you to consider that you can accept it and be at peace with it, whether it happened 5 minutes ago or 5 decades ago. You can accept it, consciously make the decision to accept it and be at peace with it, because you deserve that. You deserve to, let yourself off the hook over something that happened in the past. And so that for me was the biggest lesson that I learned, is that whether it's traffic, like we usually get frustrated in traffic. Why would you get frustrated in traffic? You can't change the speed of the cars. You're going to be late anyway. There's no value in spending the 30 minutes in traffic stressed out and frustrated. Like I always say, you can be stressed out or you can be blissed out. That's life. Like every day, every moment, we have the choice to be stressed out by resisting our reality, the reality of a loss, something we lost, or my car accident or cancer or traffic. We can be stressed out, but that's self-created. And I would invite you to choose to be blissed out, because you have that choice every moment of every day during life.
Hey, y'all, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys being here for the first 100 episodes. Cannot wait to see what the next 100 have in store for us. And I hope you guys have been seeing some results based on the advice that we've been offered here for the last 100 episodes. Would love to hear some feedback on what you guys think of the show, what's worked for you, what hasn't. So check us out again at the Millennial Mastermind Facebook page, and I can't wait to chat with you there. All right, y'all, have an amazing week. Take care.